Okay, there's a warning message that comes with the SmartFly, and this is unique for high-tech servos. If you're using Vitaba or JR servos, this isn't that important, but high-techs are special. We won't go into exactly how special, but what's really cool is that they have a servo programmer. This is one gizmo that you can have to where you can set your endpoints and center manually, but we don't want to use this because that's what this gizmo is designed to do. The important thing is that you reset it to the factory setup. You want to have the SmartFly have full control of the high-tech servo. So anything that's using that, we want to reset. Let me set this up here. I know that my elevator servos are high-techs, and that's these wires right here. So we're going to plug this in to the servo as labeled on the side of the programmer. And turn the unit on. At this point, kind of hard to see here because it's 90 degrees, but we want to go into the test here, and you'll see a reset. Program reset. Now in order to enter this, you want to hold both down. Yep. Hold up, down, and now it's reset. So let's go ahead and turn this off, and we'll do the other elevator servo. And you want to do this for every high-tech servo in your plane. Again, the SmartFly is going to take control, and if you're using used servos, you definitely want to do this because you don't want someone else's setup in here. The SmartFly is fully capable of doing the servo reversing, so you don't have to use the programmer to do that, as the SmartFly will do that. So let me get this wired up per channel. There is no specific order that you have to go through, but you want to make sure that all your connections are correct. Like for throttle, I have channel 1 going into the throttle on the receiver. So I'm going to take my servo lead that's hooked up, and I labeled throttle when I built it, and plug that into channel 1. And you always want to start with A first. Now channel 1 doesn't have an AB, but from all the others I can see that A is furthest forward on this bank. On the other bank, A is furthest back. And you can see I have a couple of these wires already plugged in, but I've disconnected the servo on the wing and down here in the wing. So no servers were connected while I was doing this initial setup. Again, if any of the high-techs were programmed with special things, you could damage it, and you want to make sure that everything's correct. So let me go ahead and get the rest of this wired up, and we'll come back and start adjusting some center points and setting up our control surfaces. Okay, so at this point I have everything cabled up except this one, which is my smoke pump. I want to wait and program that one later, so I'm leaving that one unplugged. And again, with the high-tech warning, you want to go through the servos one at a time if they're ganged up. So if you have two high-tech servos on the same aileron, you want to program one at a time because they'll fight with each other and lock up. Again, that's only with high-tech servos. I'm not saying they're bad servos, just they don't play nicely. You have to kind of be careful around them. So what we're going to do now is boot it up and make sure that everything comes to life. It's alive! So we can, here I got all kinds of servos moving all over the place. And at this point, all the servos should be centered. So what we want to do is, now's the time when you connect your linkage. So let me go ahead and get a servo horn on the servo, and I'll show you how to adjust that linkage. Okay, so here we can see the geometry that I have set up. You want to make sure that when the servo's centered, that your servo arm is coming out at 90 degrees from the center of the servo. And then make sure that we have equal travel when the servo moves to go move the aileron up and down. This is the upper wing aileron. Easier to set up the camera looking from the bottom side and still be comfortable working over the camera, because I'm right here. Hi! So at this point we can turn the system back on, and this is locking it at center. You can see that this is 90 degrees. Now there are plenty of gauges out there. You can use an angle. A lot of the SmartFly stuff comes with an angle built in on a piece of paper. Now if we take a step back, yeah, unfinished ceiling. We can see here, maybe. It's fun trying to do this all by yourself. That the control surface isn't quite lined up here. So I need to adjust my rod here. So let me get the tool and adjust this, and we'll get this part so that it lines up in the middle. Okay, so again, the system's turned on. I've got my servo horn on here at 90 degrees, and I want to make this right in the middle. So turn the turnbuckle here and get that lined up. And you want to do this for all four control surfaces at this point. This will set your middle geometry, and with both of these servos plugged into the same channel, they function as one wing. Let me zoom out a little bit more, and we can see bottom wing here, upper wing here, and when I move the ailerons, they move together. I didn't have to gang up any servos in the radio. There's nothing fancy or flashy here. This one's plugged into channel A, this one's plugged into channel B, and so we'll match them from there. But you want to get everything centered up good. So go ahead and this one actually looks pretty good. It looks like I did a good job from the setup in the beginning. Let me get to the other side and I'll come right back. Okay, so at this point, I've got all my control horns set up the right way. Now this is the time when you can tighten everything down and make sure that you use a lock nut on the back side. The last thing you want is all of this work to have a problem when you forget the nylon lock nut, and while you're flying the linkage pops off, and then you got a bunch of flutter and you're fighting an aircraft and you're nervous, and I'd just much rather have more fun. So let me go ahead and tighten all this down, and we'll come back and go on to the next step. Okay, when setting up my servo arms, this is one problem that you may come across, is that even though it's learned the centers and you've reset everything to factory defaults, you can see where I've made the servo arm 90 degrees from the servo, and the linkage is going out, and the rudder is set at 0 degrees straight down the center line of the airplane. Yet when I turn everything on, see how it moved just a little bit? So now I'm doing a slight left turn. While the servo recognizes this is the center point, the splines don't allow this to go straight up and down. And this is where the SmartFly gets to shine. Because what I'm going to do next is set up the camera so that you're seeing the SmartFly, and we can set the center point on the SmartFly to adjust for this, so that this is back at 90 degrees, leaving our rudder at 0. I can't have the multiple camera angles, so let me get the camera back on the SmartFly, and you won't see this, but you saw where it was before. When I turn it off, I can take this back to 90 degrees, and that puts the rudder back at 0. So just that little bit is enough. Now, a lot of people go into the radio and then just click, a little bit of sub trim or set the center that way. But we try to program everything on the SmartFly. There's very minimal programming in the radio itself. It's just your dual rates and a couple switch functions and some custom mixes. But the basic airplane setup is all stored on the SmartFly. So let me get the camera repositioned.